Greetings, everyone, geeks, nerds, and ambassadors everywhere, and welcome to the Council of One's Babylon 5 review here on the Ambassadorial Wing. And of course, I am your host, the Ambassador, and with me today I have got two of my fellow council members, Mountains of Elysium and Zod Rider. Unfortunately, Fiona Wolf is at work currently, but she has left us lots of helpful notes to help us get through this stream. And of course, as always, make sure you drop a like, join us in the chat, and share this out with all of your fellow Babylon 5 fanatic friends. And gentlemen, we have reached the end of Season 3. Zaha Doom. And to everyone in the chat, those that have been here, those that are coming in. I know Colin P. Smith was here earlier in Bureau 31. Good afternoon or good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for being here once again. Or if you identify as a energy-based life form, you have always been here. So, gentlemen, that all being said, how are we doing today? And are we ready?
Ready,
indeed. And just in time, somebody was setting off fireworks outside my window, so it was quite loud.
All right, Elysium didn't hear a thing, so you're good. So, yes, we have reached the end of Season 3. And as always, with Straczynski, he goes out, took out a favorite movie of mine. Let's start this party off with a bang. So, but yeah, this is a really cool episode. There's a lot to dig into. We get a cameo by, of course, no longer, but at the time, Bruce Boxleitner's real life wife. Now, unfortunately, his real life ex-wife, Melissa Gilbert, who, for those of you who know her career, her big start was, of course, on Little House on the Prairie, but she did deign to grace us with her presence in the Season 3 finale as Anna Sheridan. And there is a lot to get into, but I do want to kick off this stream with just a little bit of in-depth digging. I did some digging earlier this week into the title of the episode, Zaha Doom. And for those of you who know my background, I did go to seminary. I have studied ancient Biblical Greek, and I have actually studied ancient Biblical Hebrew as well. And J. Michael Straczynski, being the imaginative and creative writer that he is, he actually put an interesting little message in the title for this episode. And Zaha Doom is a pivotal part of the Babylon 5 universe. It is, a lot goes on there. Is, as many say, a place where when you go there, you do not come back quite the same, if you leave at all. And as I was doing my research for this week's episode, I got back into my ancient biblical Hebrew, and I started digging. And I discovered something very interesting about the name of the world, Zaha Doom. Colin P. Smith, they are not easy languages, especially Biblical Greek, but if you want to start somewhere, my advice would be start with Biblical Hebrew. It is somewhat easier. There's not as many grammar rules and verb rules to deal with, but I would highly recommend, if you do want to say any ancient languages, Biblical Hebrew is an interesting one. But in terms of what exactly does the word, or in this case, phrase Zaha Doom mean, it has two possible translations or interpretations. And they both tie very well into the Babylon 5 universe and the people that are involved with it, particularly for John Sheridan and for Lorianne, which we will meet in next season, Season 4. But in particular, we will the least secret lair ever. And to the chat, Excelsior's domain, Excelsior, it has been a long time. Good to see you, and glad you are able to join us this afternoon or this evening, depending on your time zone. But anyway, getting into the meaning of Zahadum. As I said, there are two interpretations for the word or the name of the planet. One is the place I go down into. And if you understand what that means in terms of ancient biblical Hebrew society or ancient Hebrew society, oftentimes when a person would travel, they would either go down to a place or they would go up to a place. You see this very prominently featured in the book of Psalms. And you would also see it very prominently used as a narrative device in, I believe it is John's Gospel in the New Testament. But it also has another possible translation, the mountain of blood, which is much more evocative, obviously. But Zahadum is a place where you go down into in terms of, if you look at the narrative structure for the episode, when John and Anna Sheridan travel to Zahadum, they go down into the depths of it or the bowels of it. And there they learn the true nature of the war between the Shadows and the Vorlons. Now, as far as the other interpretation, the Mountain of Blood, if you look at the makeup of Zahadum, its geographical makeup or its environmental makeup, it is a place of death. It is a place where blood is shed. It does bear a slight resemblance to one of our nearest celestial neighbors, and that being Mars, of course, which could be why the Shadows did place a couple of their shadow vessels there in the way back when, after the first Shadow War came to a close. But in terms of how this fits into the narrative of the episode and just within the grand scheme of the Babylon 5 universe, John goes there and he goes down below the surface, but then he goes down further when the spirit of Kosh that has latched itself onto him tells him to jump, because most likely Kosh is the portion of Kosh's consciousness that is still alive within John can sense Lorien's presence and knows that someone is down there. So, and I'll bring up Colin's comment, and then, gentlemen, I will yield the floor to you, and then we will dig into the episode further. Just has some thought, possible connection between Zahadum and various Greek heroes visiting the underworld. Yes, Colin, that is also another interpretation. I would not say it's an inaccurate one, because oftentimes Greek heroes would go into the netherworld, would cross the river Styx, which is below the surface of the earth, obviously, at least in Greek mythology it is. So, but gentlemen, that being said, I yield the floor. Your thoughts on anything I had to say, or just in terms of the episode itself?
So. I just wanted to just quickly mention here what you said earlier, the examples you gave. What'd you say about down? You said to go down there. What was the wording you used exactly?
The place I go down into.
The place I go down into. So essentially, to me, what that means as a translation would literally be the translation of hell, because you either go up or you go down.
Yes. Now, in Judaic theology, they do not have a heaven or hell, but in ancient Judaic theology, they do have a place called Sheol, where your spirit can go. And if once it dies. Now, it's not a hell of any type per se. It is simply a place where the dead dwell.
So essentially, where your consciousness would go when you pass away, when there's no place else for it to go.
Exactly.
So
Now,
it's almost like, so is it like it's not necessarily a hell? Would it be more like a purgatory, or a graveyard, or a place for it to go and for it to dwell, where it's contained, or
well, Sheol, it isn't a place of torment, say in the concept of the Christian concept of hell.
Okay.
By any stretch. And it's also not a place where you go to have your soul cleansed in terms of purgatory, as in within Catholicism.
Right.
Sheol is simply a place where the souls of the dead dwell when they die. Now, if you want to cross that over into, say, Christian theology, when within the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed, when it speaks of Jesus descending into hell, it's not hell proper. It is a different realm that is sort of attached to hell. It's called Abraham's bosom, and Abraham's bosom is the place where the righteous dead, those that died before Christ's crucifixion and resurrection occurred, and then when he descended, he didn't descend into hell specifically. He descended into Abraham's bosom and brought all of those souls were kept, essentially. So if you want to look at what Sheridan goes through in the first 2 episodes of season 4, I mean, I know we're not there yet per se, but if you look at his journey to Zahadum, you could make the inference that Sheridan's journey further down into the bowels of Zahadum, where he will eventually encounter Lorien.
Yeah.
Sheridan is not an analog for Christ or anything along those lines. That is not Straczynski's intent by any stretch. But what the journey that Sheridan goes on does fall within, I would say, both Greek mythology, a little bit of Christian theology, and tying the title of the episode back into Jewish theology. He does go on a journey down where he does gain knowledge, because within both Christian and Jewish mindsets or theological mindset, you go on a journey to gain knowledge.
But you also have the story, essentially the story with Sheridan of death and resurrection. So,
in a matter of speaking, yes, but here's the thing. Lorien says it himself later on in season 4. He's like, I cannot create life. He's like, but I can breathe upon the glowing embers that will re-spark life.
Yes.
He's like, Lorien realizes and understands, and we can get into this further when we get to those episodes, that he is not any type of
God per se.
He is not a deity to any extreme whatsoever. He is simply, he has learned knowledge himself, and he has abilities that he has gained throughout his life, his existence, that allows him to do the things that he does. That's what. Go ahead, Lysium.
No, I was just thinking, it's suppose in a way it's the difference between God, the capital G, that Christianity would believe in, or the lowercase g God, which would be the Greek gods. Even Lorien would fall into it, that he has power, but he's still contained within the universe. He's
exactly
limited.
Exactly. So, and I do want to say hi to the chat and everything real quick. Sci-Fi Nation, Sci-Fi is good to see you. Thank you for tuning in today. I know you probably weren't expecting discussion on Christian and Jewish theology and so on.
It's wholly appropriate though, Ambassador. I mean, it makes
So,
makes all the sense in the world to make those connections. So I'm really glad that you brought all that up.
Well, as I said, my seminary education has granted me a particular insight into certain things that most people wouldn't think of. And as we were getting closer and closer, and the more I kept going back to the name Zahadum, and I looked at the structure of the word itself, it would be exceedingly difficult for me to try and write it out in ancient Hebrew here online because my keyboard isn't set up for it. But if you look at the structure of the word Zahadum, you can. The way my mind works, I go back to the ancient Hebrew alphabet, or biblical Hebrew alphabet specifically, and that's where I started my journey. And I looked at the structure of the word, and then I went from there. And now, how it would be pronounced, sort of, in ancient Hebrew, and this is not precise exact, so don't please forgive me. It would be ze he du, or ze he dum, or as another way to say it would be say hey dum. And the reason when I was doing the research for this, hey is part of a root for the Hebrew word for mountain, or hair, which is spelled H, or not, well, it would be hey Aleph Resh. And doom is translated roughly, it would be pronounced dom or Adam, which means, or dom specifically, which means blood. So the mountain of blood.
So Zahadun is translated literally as mountain of blood.
It's one possible translation. It's not exact, but it's as close as I could get with the two translations I've given.
But it just seems eerily appropriate. I mean, it really does match up kind of in the context of what you're saying. So could you imagine it being almost, almost like a perception of the afterlife, essentially these shadows being the dark side of, say, like an afterlife of some sort, dwelling at the bottom of that mountain of blood. I mean,
yeah,
it's I mean, you could really, if you wanted to, dig into it on a level, on an almost molecular level, in terms of the way it's structured. This is quite fascinating.
Yeah. Well, to our fellow council member, Lord Koj, good to see you, bud, and glad you can make it. I know you're a little late, and it's okay. You can go back and catch up later. We haven't gotten into discussing the episode specifically. I've just been given a little bit of extrapolation on the title of the episode and what it means in the context of discussing the episode and the series in general. So, good to have you here, bud, and glad you could join us this afternoon.
What's up,
happy to be here for this. How's it going, brothers? In chat, happy to be here. Thank you.
But anyway, we can come back to this topic later on in the stream, but let's dig into the episode proper and everything, and we'll go from there. So, gentlemen, I yield the floor. Where do we want to begin? Zahadum.
First of all, I think the episode itself just taken as a whole, it is so monumental, and I would dare say that it has got to be one of the most important episodes of the entire series, if not the most important. And the reason I say that is because there's so much that where there's literally no going back once these events occur. This is like the catalyst for everything that we are going to get moving forward with Babylon 5 as a series. So I mean, there's so this episode is so important, mythology wise, that I just, to me, I just to start out, I just had to say that because I mean, I don't really think that there's a more important episode that I could think of offhand. I mean, do any of you? I mean, I don't.
I was thinking about that too, and I agree. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Jay. Go ahead, please. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Because I was thinking about this all week. How important this episode is, and how much we have already in previous episodes of this show. We've even made reference to it before I even got here.
Several times.
Now we're here. Yeah.
Yes.
It really feels like a crucial middle point, even though it's at the end of season 3. And if you're looking at all the seasons, I guess you would say the middle of season 3 is technically in the middle. But I feel this is the crucial middle point where all the past has been dealt with, and we come to terms with the present, and then Babylon 5 can now push forward. This is like, it's like, Snyder fans, in our film, we have like the future has taken root in the present. I feel this is like one of those defining center points where there's no point of return after this, It's and we even see like even Bruce Boxleiter as an actor. He has his what's that other show he was in? Something and Mrs. King?
Scarecrow and
Mrs. King. Yeah. He's still kind of, when he came into the show, I didn't like him for a long time because he kind of had that demeanor, and his hairstyle kind of bugged me in season 3 because I kept thinking about that show. But after this episode, we really see the commitment of not just his character and role, but everyone else, like kind of, all right, there's no going back. We're going forward with destiny. We're going to face it head on, and we're going straight to hell itself. It's so pivotal. It's like, because the past gets like resolved and everything. And, we, like I said, we push forward. It's like so key. I love it.
I think was it Lore Runner described this episode as what he calls an elbow. Things change after this, and all of what has gone before has led up to it. All that happens after is because of it. It's one of the most important episodes in the entire series. And like you're saying, I'm trying to think of other ones that are of equal importance.
Like maybe War Without End is pretty close, but I think
even War Without End, I don't think. Yeah, even War Without End, I don't think comes close to the level of impact, like Elysium was saying, when it comes to before and after. I mean, you could make an argument for Sleeping in Light being as important, just in terms of the way that it wraps everything up at the end. But yes. I mean, as far as where we go from here, I mean, it literally puts the past into perspective.
Yes.
On so many levels. I mean, it's like the magnitude of what's going to become of Sheridan and where all of these characters are going to go. And just like the whole reckoning of him coming to terms with the idea of what they did to his wife, how they literally corrupted her being and took her over and fundamentally changed everything about her, and Sheridan being who he is, knowing that he had no choice. He had to see it through. He had to find out the realities of what was really going on. And it's almost like, I feel like he did that not only because of all the greater implications and all the things we're going to learn about later, but he also did it for his wife. He did it for closure in his relationship with her. He did it honoring her memory, knowing that she would not want to be existing under those circumstances. And it's just so monumental on a personal level for Sheridan. And not only, and it's like we as viewers can feel every bit of that emotional weight.
Yeah.
She's almost the opposite of Brother Edward, who has the death of personality. His personality was killed. He becomes a good man because it was implanted in to become a better person. The shadows are the opposite to her. And her very last word was basically a shadow ship scream. That's all that was left of who she was.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And even when she's, I feel I see it's really prominent that he's onto her when he's talking to her and she's talking about technology pushing Earth forward.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like that's for sure when Sheridan knew ahead of time, like, this is not my wife anymore. She sounds exactly like that one girl from season 2 that Clark
like
sent.
when he sees
that's not her.
When Sheridan sees the schematic on the tablet.
Mhm.
Like
Yes.
that scene where he sees the schematic and it's just like
That's the same scene, yeah.
It's like it's like son of a bitch. Like at that point you realize that he's like yeah, this isn't my wife. This is nowhere near what my wife is. Yeah, maybe in physical form, and maybe in the way that she speaks, sure, but this goes against everything. She's been corrupted in every manner that you could imagine, and that's got to be absolutely horrifying, not only for him but for her. Like wow, it's it's so monumental,
Especially with his experience on Babylon 5 and all of these episodes of learning how the shadows operate and what they do and seeing it firsthand. And what if like Sheridan was stationed elsewhere and they needed Sheridan big time and they sent her to him wherever, and he didn't have that experience, he would totally fall for it. But now he's he's really ahead of the game.
Yes, absolutely.
I actually wonder, could they? Oh, sorry. Do you know what, Colin's message has been up there for a while? I can come back to what I was going to say.
Elysium, you go ahead. It's up there. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
I was thinking Garibaldi has some similar experience where his personality is crushed, twisted by the shadows. He spent time in a shadow vessel, and they got him back. Could Anna have been saved at some stage? But was there enough time? Again, he had to do what he had to do. But could they have done something for her? Her memories were there. Was her personality, like Bester said to Garibaldi, screaming inside a prison in her own mind? That she was still there, just trapped, unable to get out. And could they, with telepaths, have helped her break down those walls?
That's what makes it so much more tragic. The fact that that's sort of that point is essentially alluded to, the idea, and you have to think about that idea about her being trapped in there, literally being trapped in the bottom, literally being trapped in that hell, and not being able to get out, and there not being any way to get her out. And that's the tragedy of it all, mate, because Elysium, maybe they could have saved her. But I kind of got the impression that she was so far gone that
I'm getting some weird feedback. I don't know if any of you hear it.
That there was no way of that happening. I don't know.
I'm not getting feedback on my end at the moment.
Me either.
I'm not getting anything. So
all right, I'll be back. It's probably on my end.
I wonder if
that's
like in some ways she's like 7 of 9. She was like a Borg. Like she was forced to do things, doing things inside her own mind, and broken from the shadows, maybe. But I think we hear that those the weapons we see in a later come to fruition, that they are all so far gone, so far twisted, so far messed. Nothing can really be done for them. So I wonder, even worse than the Borg.
Yeah, because here's the thing with the shadows. They are different from the Borg in many, many ways. And I do want to touch upon something I can't remember who said. This episode very much sets up the plot line going forward. War Without End reconciles the storyline with Sinclair / Valen. And it does it very well, but it also gives us hints as to what is to come. And if you remember in the video message that Sheridan sends to the Lynn, he's like, I remember when we did the time when I was jumping through time and you told me not to go to Zaha Doom. He's like, I think to myself, what if me going to Zaha Doom could prevent Centauri Prime from being just hit as hard as it was? But unfortunately, that point is immutable. It cannot be changed because it's not in Sheridan's hands to change it. It's in Londo's hands to change it.
Yes.
We will come to Londo here in due course. Trust me. But as far as the situation with Anna Sheridan and John going to Zaha Doom with her, she was irreparably altered. But here's the bigger thing. He wants to know what the whole war is about. Kosh hinted at it a little. But here's the interesting thing about this episode, and this is one of the interesting things that Straczynski did with this series. For one of the few times ever in science fiction, or in fiction in general, we get the rationale of the quote-unquote antagonist or bad guy or villain. And once the one older gentleman, Justin, gives his dialogue, or his monologue rather, to Sheridan, the interesting thing is Sheridan believes it because of his time with Kosh and seeing what the Vorlons do. And that for me is the most pivotal and interesting point of this episode, not to mention of this series. Yeah, Elysium, thank you. Justin, the man in the middle. Not to mention you've got Mr. Morden there too as well. But the fascinating thing for me is Sheridan is, as Justin said, he is a nexus. We can't just kill you. Someone will just take up your place. And Justin is right, because think about everybody that is left behind that could take over for Sheridan, even though he is the one that will be. We know this. But there are others that can take Sheridan's place as head of the army on the opposite side. You've got Delenn, you've got Ivanova, you've got Marcus Cole to a degree, you've got, well, and even though he's not actively participating, you've got Elkesh, who is there on the station. Potentially, Elkesh could have taken over and told them, okay, y'all are fighting for the Vorlons now. We're going to go, and the Vorlons would have used the younger races as cannon fodder, more or less. But there were other players that could take Sheridan's spot and lead the charge against the Shadows. What the Shadows were trying to do was turn Sheridan's mind to their way of thinking. Just let the younger races go. Don't support them. Don't rally them. Don't do what you're doing. Just let them go. Let the alliance fall. Let it die. But Sheridan, being the strong-minded individual that he is, he's like, no, I have taken up this mantle of leadership. I have promised my honor, my life, my blood to this cause. And he's like, I am not going to let it go. And that for me is the most interesting part of this episode. The focus is on John. We've got time with Londo, but the focus, and I will say this, I loved the scenes with John and Anna I love the scenes with John and Delenn. And I love the scenes with John and Mr. Garibaldi. I thought for me that was some of the best writing, and I'll actually bring up Fiona Wolf's some of her notes that she left us. Sheridan is cagey. He has Garibaldi add that special surprise to the White Star. The Shadows worry comes through Anna. We can't let this ship touch the ground of Zahadum. That plays into what Sheridan needs a ship for, as his name goes, Newcomb. John Newcomb Sheridan. Also bring up another note here. I remember Delenn's line, Zahadum is the world of the shadows. No one leaves the same as they arrive. So that's a triple snowball towards Anna. It was creepy how she was walking towards Sheridan near the ledge as he awaited the White Star. Her hand stretched out and oh, we only want your soul, Johnny boy. That's one of Fiona's notes. Okay, and this is also a note from Fiona. According to J. Michael Straczynski, the name Zahadum is of Minbari origin, roughly translated as death of the future. While the novel Shadow Within, considered mostly canon, which details the story of the Icarus and its voyage to Zahadum, reveals that the Earth codename for the mysterious planet is Alpha Omega 3. Alpha and Omega, when used together, can often refer to the beginning and the end, or the beginning of the end, as they are the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet, respectively. So it appears that both the Minbari and the humans' name for this world roughly means the same thing. Kind of like what I said earlier.
Wow.
When I did my research on the ancient Hebrew root for the name Zahadum. So, anyway, fellas, with all that being said, your thoughts?
I just want to say that's good work done, because we know JMS has used inspiration from the Bible a lot for almost all his work. So yes, that's very spot on.
Yeah. So, Elysium, Zod.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely with Lord Kojay and everything that you've pointed out. I think that as far as the religious implications of all of this, and in terms of what is happening, it's almost like when you think about Sheridan and you think about his journey as a whole, it's a very spiritual one. In so many ways, ultimately, what we get from Zahadun, and what we get from Newcomb Sheridan's ultimate sacrifice is made there too. A lot of what we get. Do you guys feel that Sheridan would have been content with the idea of dying after he pulled off the big white star nuking thing? Do you think he would have been like content knowing that, yeah, I died, but I took all of them with me, kind of like paralleling what Sinclair did at the Battle of the Line, knowing that he didn't have any choice, but if he was going down, he was taking them with him?
I'd say yes, it's the same thing.
Elysium, what about you?
Yeah, I think in many ways, like Sheridan was willing to sacrifice himself. He wanted to live, and he realized in that discussion with Justin that he wasn't getting out of there. So that's when he decided with the suicide run, but he was going to either drop those bombs if he got back to the White Star, or suicided if he couldn't. He was it was like he was there on his own in the dark, like in, I keep going back to Comes the Inquisitor. He was willing to sacrifice himself without fanfare, where no one knew what he's done. Garibaldi was the only one who knew he was leaving the station.
Yeah.
And Sheridan was willing to do that to give the people a chance. He didn't want to, but he was willing to.
Yeah, and I do want to address Colin's comment here. We're Alpha and Omega, written or engraved in the Worldbuster bomb in the second Planet of the Apes movie. Yes, Colin, you have got a very sharp memory. That is a nice little tidbit you got there, bud. So well done. Yeah, and I do want to bring up his other comment here. Definitely, Kosh already told him that if he went to Zahadum, he would die. And I've always been interested with that phrase because there is a theological thread to it, in particular with both Christian and Jewish theology. When we read that particular line of scripture in the Old Testament, when God says to Adam and Eve, when you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die. He doesn't mean literally. He doesn't mean physical death, but almost like a death of innocence. Or your eyes will be revealed to all of existence's truth. And if you think about John's journey to Zahadum and what he discovers, he does suffer a physical death after a point. But he also seemingly suffers a death of belief because he no longer believes the lie that the Vorlons have been feeding everyone for all of these centuries, essentially, that the shadows are just outright evil, that they're outright bad, that they have no good within them. But when in fact, even Delin herself said that first one races stayed behind as shepherds, the shadows and the Vorlons, but they became corrupted. And we don't know necessarily the source of the corruption or what happened per se, but we do know that there was a falling out between the two species, between the shadows and the Vorlons, on how they were to function as shepherds. As Justin says, the Vorlons are lords of order. They're like your parents who want you to clean your room, play by the rules, and do everything the way it should be. Whereas the shadows are more like your wild, crazy, rebellious aunt or uncle who want to lead you down the right path to do the right thing in life, but want you to make mistakes along the way, who don't want your life to be so strictly structured to where you don't learn anything in life. And Sheridan finally realizes the great deception, essentially. When he hears... Go ahead, Lysium, please.
I was just thinking, as you said there, they actually contradict themselves in the very same conversation. They says, yeah, we're about, chaos, doing your own thing. But yet each of them says you do what you're told.
Exactly.
Yep.
So and Vorlon's both, they're both about control. And
yeah, it is like family elders, both telling you what to do, but with slightly different philosophies, like two sides of the same coin, essentially.
With different mannerisms or like different ways to go about it.
Right. Exactly.
Like the shadows really like two forces clashing. Like it looks like that excites them because they're like, ooh, it inspires people to do better, make more technology, split the atom, blah, 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 they really like the aggression. It's conflict. It's like some people have that logic of like, all right, the two dogs will fight and the one that lives is the best one to keep, It's harsh. I don't agree with it, but some people find that it's like the theory of sport competition, bringing the best out of us, taken to the extreme.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. But what you were saying about he will die, because Vorlons are rarely so specific. They talk in like a lot of riddles and kind of poetic. So I would say it would be the death of like, not personality like we've seen before with Mindwife, but a death of a realization of something that will redefine you afterwards. Because then Sheridan's, when his last words with Kosh is like, yeah, you said I'll go to Zahadum, I'll die. And then Kosh is like, yes, you will now. And then at the end of this, we have like Jakar doing a quote from
Yeah, and
Jiquan?
I actually have Koji, if you don't mind. It's from Vienna.
Yeah, go.
Okay,
I have it in my notes
And
too,
this-
but go on.
okay. And this is from our fellow council member Fiona Wolf. As for today's episodes, another favorite. Some arcs are pushing forward in words of prophecy revealed. Shakara gets some excellent lines. Obviously, I'm not Andreas Kousulis, so I will do the best I can. It was the end of the Earth year 2260, and the war had paused. Suddenly and unexpectedly. All around us, it was as if the universe were holding its breath, waiting. All life can be broken down into moments of transition or moments of revelation. This had the feeling of both. Shaquan writes, there is a greater darkness than the one we fight. It is the darkness of the soul that has lost its way. The war we fight is not against powers and principalities. Thank you, Apostle Paul. It is against chaos and despair. Greater than the death of flesh is the death of hope, the death of dreams. Against this peril, we can never surrender. The future is all around us, waiting in moments of transition to be born in moments of revelation. No one knows the shape of that future or where it will take us. We only know that it is always born in pain.
That's the truth right there.
And I love the fact that Straczynski included a line from the Book of Ephesians, written by the Blessed Saint Paul. But, there is much truth in that monologue, written by Straczynski and spoken by Kousulis, aka Ambassador Shakar. Sheridan could have simply surrendered. He could have said, okay, sure, I will relent. I will pull back. I will no longer try to bolster and support the younger races, and we will simply let you do what you are doing now. And that would have been the death of a dream that Sheridan didn't even know he had yet. But he will have once he is revitalized by Lorien. Because he says it in the episode in season 4, Into the Fire. We're as caught in this cycle. We are just as much caught up in this cycle as you all are. And this is the moment when the younger races will finally have the leader that they need to break the cycle that has been going on for eons beyond count between the Shadows and the Vorlons. And Justin and Morden was right, or specifically Justin was right. Sheridan is the Nexus. Turn him one way, the war goes in one direction. Turn him another, the same is true. And that is ultimately one of the great themes of this series. Our ability to make difficult choices. And every major character has their moment where they have to make the difficult choice. Sheridan could have taken Anna's hand and gone back in, and they could have smoothed things over, seemingly. But he listened to his mentor. He listened to his friend. Kosh Nenarek. Gone but not forgotten. And when Kosh told him...
But the question, though, I think a profound question to ask, Ambassador, is: was there a better way? Would there have been an easier way of accomplishing what Sheridan wanted to do without, detonating the White Star and all that? Could he have not lulled the shadows into a false sense of security and pretended to be on their side long enough to get things to go in a different direction? I'm always wondering about that because in a lot of ways, and then it goes back to what Elysium was questioning about the idea of possibly redeeming or rescuing Anna Sheridan. See, these are questions that I think about a lot when I think about the overall arc of what happened at Zahadum. There's so many different ways and so many different directions that this could have gone in from Sheridan's perspective. Because if you ask me, Sheridan, like you just pointed out, held all the cards. Whichever direction Sheridan goes is the direction the war goes. So I wonder about all of that. Would he have been able to, like it looked like what the Shadows wanted to do was the Shadows wanted to get him on their side, like we've pointed out earlier. But if he could have had gotten them to let their guard down just for a second, he might have been able to turn the tide of the war without going to the great lengths that he did, and maybe saved himself from being killed and then having to be essentially reanimated by Lorien later on. So I'm sort of conflicted in a lot of it, because I feel like they were open and they were willing to take Sheridan in, especially with Anna. So it sort of made it sort of would have made sense for him to be able to kind of go down that path in a way, or almost like, if you look at the, for a Star Wars reference, if you look at Luke Skywalker in the Dark Empire comic book, where he essentially goes down the dark path and joins the dark side so that he can conquer the Emperor once and for all. The idea that, Sheridan may have been able to essentially maybe not sway the Shadows, but trick them long enough to be able to conquer them from within. I don't know, just a thought.
I think that's exactly what he did, actually, because that's the only way you could do it, because he has the knowledge and we have the experience that see, where Luke has a different one, because he had seen Vader turn to the from dark side to light, whereas Sheridan, no one has seen someone come back from shadow takeover of the mind and the control of the spinal cord and the neural.
So you're talking about essentially the messianic figure that Sheridan becomes when he comes back from Zahadum, because
before that,
seen that before.
Like before that, because he didn't know any of that was a possibility.
Yeah.
He knows the shadow control before it and all that. And
what I was saying was about, was there an easier way for him to do what he did without essentially sacrificing himself the way he did at that point?
I'm thinking no. Sorry to jump in, but yeah, I'm thinking no, because he knows the enemy to the point where there's enough that they don't know, where you cannot even find an easy way out, because it's already difficult as heck to even get as far as he could. And he's got this ticket to get to the heart of their organization. Sure. And it clearly looks like an initiation process, because he experienced that with Clark in season 2 with that lady. So he's familiar with organizations and systems. And I feel like Sheridan is committed to being a warrior for a cause. Like he said that he joined Earth Force because he wanted to serve something greater than he was. And I think that is his truth, because Sheridan is still always looking for a greater truth to fight for, a reason to be a warrior, to do good at the skill set that he can. And Seeing how everything he's learned up to this point, seeing that this is a tight knit, crazy secret circle, like a cult, in the sense that the shadows operate. He has a ticket to get to the heart of their operation, and he sees that they're clearly trying to recruit him. Because that when they're trying to recruit him, their guard is already down, and when he sees that point that they've already made a decision, his decision for him, he already has his hand on the gun. So he's just looking for the right cards to deal with. So I think he's really playing poker as best. And just seeing that, I don't think there was any easy way out. Otherwise, he would not have, gone through such great lengths.
What I mean is,
because the easiest way would be stay back on Babylon 5 and say, forget you.
No. But the idea that he could have basically went along with it and gotten in with them on a level where they would have trusted him completely, and then he could have betrayed.
But they were going to scan him anyways, though.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. Elysium, I want you to this thing you put in the private chat and everything. Why don't you give us your insight? Why don't you tell everybody that's watching everything exactly what this is, and I want you to give your thoughts on it. Then we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll read it out there. It was from the Lurker's Guide. JMS describes Sheridan. In the sense, as someone else has pointed out, Sheridan is a hero in the Heinleinian tradition. He does the logical thing, whatever that is, to survive. Okay, I'm about to get vaporized, but if that hole is several miles deep, that might shield me and keep me alive for another 10 seconds. Yes, there's a splat at the end problem, but I'll have 10 seconds which to figure out that problem. And he does say to, just going on, to Delenn, if you're falling out a window, you might as well try learn how to fly. That is Sheridan. For me, like we had the discussion, an easy way. No, Sheridan is very much principled. He will never do anything that will contradict his principles. And I popped something else in there that what Sheridan understood that Justin, Anna, and Morden didn't. What influence did Justin have over the shadows? Justin thought he had some influence, but perception and reality are often at odds.
That is true.
They didn't realize, but Sheridan could see. He could not have. He knew the shadows wouldn't buy an act. He just needed to get in close to them, find out what their mission was, and then nuke them.
Exactly. And at least you hit it right on the head. You're dealing with a race of beings that are essentially thousands, if not millions of years old. You're not going to dupe them. Not going to happen. You can't dupe the shadows no better than, well, to use a little frame of reference that you, Koj and Zod would get, and myself as well. I imagine a few people in the chat would as well. You're not going to dupe the shadows no better than someone could try to dupe Dark Side. Not going to happen. Not going to work. If he won't bend to their will, they will break him.
Now that would be an interesting chess match, wouldn't it? The Shadows versus Dark Side. Would that not be unique?
Well, to use the old tagline, regardless of who wins, everybody loses. But
pretty much.
Yeah. Here's the thing with that possibility of Sheridan trying to manipulate the shadows. They're not gonna give him the opportunity. If they see that if he concedes the point, they're going to slap him in some sort of mind control machine, alter his mind, scramble his brain, and turn him into a nice, obedient servant, essentially. They're going to do the same thing to him.
So another Anna. Or another Morden.
Well, yeah. Almost in essence what the Borg did to Picard in TNG with Best of Both Worlds Parts 1 and Parts 2.
Yeah.
They would take the best parts of him and accentuate them for their own ends, and they would kill everything else off that wasn't of use to them. That's what the Shadows would have done to Sheridan if he had given him the chance. But
so essentially trying to dupe them would have backfired, is what you're saying, because they would. Yeah, I see now.
There's even as smart as intelligent and cagey as Sheridan is, you can't outwit the devil. You may think you do. You may think you have outwitted the devil, but at the same time. Yeah, Elysium, I got everything you said just fine, but no worries.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. But honestly, yeah, you can't dupe the devil, and let's be honest here. You can almost make the analogy that the shadows and the Vorlons, to maybe a degree, are a metaphor, maybe more so the shadows than the Vorlons. But the shadows are a metaphor or a parallel for Lucifer. Think about it. They fell from grace. They fell from their role as a shepherd for the younger races, and they became essentially the big boogity, the big bad,
dwelling in dark places.
They became the devil, essentially. Well, the thing to remember is Zahadum, their civilization was originally on the surface. But then in the last Shadow War, the Vorlons and the other races actually had the balls to go to Zahadum and orbital bombardment the sucker straight into to the point where they moved everything underground. I mean, you see the stray obelisk here and there on the surface, but other than that, they moved their entire civilization underground. So, in a lot of ways, the Shadows and the Vorlons are like Lucifer. They have fallen from their original intention, their original purpose, and they become their own worst enemy. They have become the thing that they fear or hate the most. But anyway, there's
actually something in the Lurker's Guide about them building underground. Why did they build an easily penetratable dome over an underground city? I said it's an efficient way of lighting an underground city several miles across. You can open or close it to allow the big vessels in for construction purposes and so on. If you build something that big, you'll need a way of getting stuff in there, then lighting it without consuming vast amounts of energy.
That's true.
That's why John could nuke them.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. They I don't think the Shadows perceive per se that someone would be willing to come to Zahadum just to essentially die. And that's what Sheridan did. He came there to die, but he wasn't going to go, as he said, to Kosh in intermissions and interludes and examinations. I may go there and I may go down fighting, but I will not go quietly and I will not go alone. The Shadows didn't anticipate that. Now, I will say this, even as wise as they are, as powerful as they are, they do have a few fallible points. But here's the thing. For Sheridan to do what he did was one thing. For him to try and play a long con or a long game on the Shadows, that's another. You get in close enough to do what he did, but trying to trick them into going your way, yeah, they're just going to slap you in the mind scrabbler machine and make you a nice obedient little servant. So,
actually, there's one thing I'm thinking. I believe the Shadows were concerned, but not worried about the younger races, and they knew the Vorlons wouldn't bombard Zahadum because both of them knew about Lorien. Lorien does tell Sheridan later, yeah, the Vorlons knew I'm here. The Shadows moved here because of me. And so there's no way the Vorlons would bombard Zahadum.
But none of the other races knew that fact. But unfortunately, none of the other races, at least individually, the younger races, there's no way they could pull off a effective orbital bombardment just on one race in particular. It would take all of them to do it. But Colin, yeah, you're right. Wasn't Zahadum actually Lorian's home world rather than the Shadows? Yes. If I remember correctly, Lorian does make that reference that the Zahadum was his world. So, and he was the only one of his race that hadn't gone beyond the rim or died, essentially. So, but there's one other thing we haven't really touched on. We've been talking about all this stuff for a little over an hour now. The whole fallout between Sheridan and Delenn with the revelation that Anna is alive. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that particular plot point in the episode?
The idea of Delenn and Sheridan, that whole relationship evolved because of this episode. Essentially, you get like what I was saying earlier about the idea of closure in the relationship between Anna and John, and the idea that now if Sheridan were to come back, he's fully invested and able to move forward with Delenn. He's finally come to terms with his emotions, finally come to terms with how he feels about her, and has reconciled that with himself. And as we know, Delenn, of course, has been in love with Sheridan for a while. So it's essentially coming full circle and allowing her to see that. And also it kind of touches on the idea of, once again, a tragic scenario, because what if John doesn't come back?
Yes, very true.
I do feel he did feel betrayed by her, that she should have told him. It's something that I've heard a few times described with Sheridan. He's all about choice, giving people the option. And Delenn denied that to him and kept something that major from him. But yet he loved her enough to leave that message. That
exactly.
He didn't want to leave on a fight. It's like myself and my wife. If we have an argument, we don't go to bed still having that argument. We don't want to leave it fester. So he left her, but left her knowing that he'd forgiven her. He knew it, maybe that she had to do it, and told her he loved her.
Yeah.
And that he was going to do what he had to do.
Well, and that's the truly... I'm going to say this. I don't know if Mayor Vorlon was ever in any type of soap opera, whether it was overseas or here in the States or anything, but we know that Melissa Gilbert and Bruce Boxleitner were both in sort of soap opera-esque type series back earlier in their careers. I hate to say this, but this almost felt a little bit like a homage to the old 1980s or 90s daytime soap operas back in the day when Boxleitner and Gilbert were starting their careers out. Because you think about the dialogue and the way that they were reacting and acting off of one another, it almost it smacked just a little bit of a soap opera drama. And he's like,
daytime soapish. Yeah.
That's one of my two rare critiques with Babylon 5. They do tend to get a little daytime soap opera-ish with how they portray the little romance part and the emotions that go there, even with how they shoot it. And this kind of irritates me, where people do this dramatic look away and they're looking off somewhere else, and then the actor stands up, looks at them, and they talk with their backs to each other. Then they do a dramatic turn to say another sentence. I'm like, come on, no, you guys are forcing it.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the habit of the
dramatic squirrel
directors at the time.
Oh my gosh, Elysium.
What squirrel?
The ones and the restless.
The ones and the restless. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Oh my gosh, that is gold right there. That is gold. Oh my god!
Oh man!
See him? That is a good.
The hyperspace of our lives. General Medlab.
yeah, definitely.
General Hospital was my jam. I know that one.
Well, could you think about Ardwin Chamberlain doing the voiceover for a soap opera, but him doing it in the voice of Kosh?
The one dies to live.
No. One cycle to live.
Yeah, there you go. One cycle to live. Yeah.
Oh, at least he didn't wake up in the shower at the end of the episode.
Like
You know, and the way some of those scenes are shot, that actually could have been a possibility at some point. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, just in terms of the soapish, element. But yeah, we're very fortunate that did not happen.
It doesn't happen as
At
often.
the
But yeah.
same time, it's a nice little. Oh my gosh! Call it P. Smith.
Dark Shadow. Yes. Yes. There you go.
Back a week or so ago,
This
I
is
did
the wrong key.
Babylon, Dallas 5. Dallas 5.
Yeah, pretty much. Dallas 5.
No, Minbari Crest.
Yeah.
Falcon Crest, Minbari Crest.
Yep.
Man.
This might get clipped out. I'll put this up as a little short later.
No, this is classic.
And to the chat, for face I haven't seen in a while. Oh, wait a minute.
Dynasty
Here,
5.
here we go. Benson's so refreshing to listen to a conversation that doesn't include the Cyberverse every few minutes. You deserve more subscribers, Ambassador Benson's. It is good to see you, my friend, and thank you for tuning in. I know it is kind of late where you're at, so hope you're having a good evening or a good late night or whatever the case. But Colin P. Smith, Destiny 5. Let's see. How can we? No, Centauri Destiny.
Yeah, there you go.
Ooh, I like that Centauri Destiny.
Think about it. You could do it.
Where we go back where we were supposed to be, and Adira.
I think Colin
Well,
will get
remember there
one.
was a soap opera. There was a soap opera called Guiding Light, and I think that actually would be appropriate for Babylon 5 as well.
There's also Moonlighting back in the day.
Yeah.
I love that show. I did. Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd. She was a cutie. All the ladies back in the day had blonde hair and they were cute, just like Melissa Gilbert. Because think about it, she's the blonde in this episode too. And okay, can I just say it the way she says, "You must be Delin. I'm Anna, John's wife." Can you just say? Can you be more soap opera? Melissa?
Yeah, with the pausing. Yeah.
Yeah, she came in all
yes.
like pausing. Wow.
Oh my god! Could you imagine a cat fight between Anna and Delin? That would have been hysterical.
Oh, I wish Dylan would whoop her butt, man.
Or better yet, between Susan and Anna.
Oh, there's no competition.
I don't know. Anna's scrappy. I think she can hold her own.
Well, and
she does have two shadows following her.
Yeah. She's under the control of the shadows, so essentially she would be like a cold-blooded killer. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. And okay, Benson's. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I've never watched the show. Could you give me a quick synopsis? I can, and I will give my level best effort to do so in like 2 minutes. Babylon 5 was created by the writer-director James Michael Straczynski. It is set in a future timeline of Earth, essentially. It takes place on a space station funded by a race called the Minbari and by EarthGov. It centers around a couple of key conflicts, one being the war against the Shadows and the war against the corrupt President Clark. And there's a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of really cool sci-fi action and plot lines and so on. There's a lot of great character arcs within the series. Benson's, I don't know if HBO Max has become available over in your neck of the woods as of yet, but if you have access to it, or if you have Amazon Prime, or obviously you have YouTube, you can rent or purchase the 5 seasons of Babylon 5. If you do not have HBO Max, then you can watch all 5 seasons We are currently wrapping up. This is the season finale of season 3. We'll be moving into season 4 next week. But think of Babylon 5 as a, and I don't mean to. This isn't meant to sound mean or anything, but as a lower budget version of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which of course Star Trek Deep Space Nine is a semi ripoff of Babylon 5, essentially. So, Elysium, I hope that answers your question. If it does not, I suggest you refer to the playlist that this stream will be a part of. It's called My Babylon 5 Review, and it has every single video that I have done both solo and with the council, whatever form that council has taken at the time, discussing the whole entire series. So, anyway, the down belowers from EastEnders Colin P. Smith. I actually have heard of that, but I've never watched it.
EastEnders is just basically misery, pain, and pain. Terrible stuff.
Oh,
what is cool about the show, though, the show does stick to its guns as far as it is inspired and kind of is like Casablanca meets Lord of the Rings in a futuristic Battlestar Galactica Star Wars type of setting. And yes. I think it holds true to its inspiration through and through.
Yes.
To give something original with that mix. Just like how Batman is original, but essentially he's a mixture of, Sherlock Holmes, Zorro, and the Shadow. Yes. But, the combination creates something nice.
Ooh. And Benson's, I like political intrigue, so I'll give it a shot. I think, honestly, Benson's, I think you will enjoy the series. I wouldn't been covering it for the last couple of years if I didn't enjoy the series as much as I do. And to the chat, Lewis Cox, thank you for that lead, Lewis. I appreciate it. And Lewis, thank you for tuning in this evening. Hope you're having a great day. And he says you can buy all 5 seasons of Babylon 5 on iTunes, Amazon Prime, and is on HBO Max if you have it. Yeah, Lewis Cox. Thank
and
you
it's the
much.
Remastered.
Yeah,
yes, it's the remastered.
It's the beautiful versions of the series. Yeah.
This is a year of full screen remastered IMAX format, I've noticed for me.
Yes.
And I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, and I'll bring up Elysium's comment here as well, if I can get it to pop up. Sheridan to Garibaldi. Next time we meet, if all is set, we will talk about the weather. A wonderful way to say a wonderful goodbye to a friend. Yeah. And I love what Garibaldi says. He's like, I heard a report from Earth. They're having a late winter. It's snowing in New York. Snow in reference to theoretically nuclear winter, which is what you get when you set off a nuke. Which makes you wonder, did Zaha Doom have a nuclear winter after what Sheridan did? Because essentially he did set off a couple of nukes.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like his MO, his style. He always surprise nukes people.
Right.
In the Minbari War with the shadows.
Star Killer.
With freaking the third space, he's like, yo, I'm the bomb, man. I'm gonna make it happen.
Yeah, he's the bomber man. He's
bomber man.
That's what. Now that I think about it, you guys are not wrong. He likes to use nukes surprisingly. I mean, he uses it like you said in the TV movie in the beginning. He uses them here, and then they'll use them again in the not the finale, but the at Coriana 6. Yep.
Yeah. It's all about hit him hard.
Good morning, gentlemen. This is your wake up call.
Unless you have sunblock 2 million, it's going to be a bad day for you.
Terminator 1, Sarah. No, not Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Sarah Connor to Dr. Silberman. If you value your life, you will leave quickly. The messenger to Londo. This quote sounds familiar. Yeah, BR31, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. Almost as if that one character actually heard or got wind of what Delenn said to those Earth Force cruisers in Severed Dreams. This is Ambassador Delenn of the Minbari. Withdraw. We have jurisdiction here, ma'am. You do not force us to engage us. Why not? Only one Earth Force captain has ever survived an encounter with the Minbari fleet. He is behind me. You are in front of me.
I love that one.
If you value your life, lives be somewhere else.
And Jared and Trudy is someone to fear. He's beaten the Mambari. He's beaten the Shadows. He's beaten pretty much every race and thing he's come up against with smaller forces.
Mm-hmm. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
I mean, he's
The only thing he needs to do is enter the Mutai, and then he's got it all.
He's got room for. I mean, he's
Oh,
got room for arrogance for real. He really does. Because I mean, come on.
In 3 battles, I think 1-on-1, when he faced the Shadows, he's defeated them, and he beat a Shadow fleet. You can't get much better than that.
You could almost call him John Big Nuts Sheridan.
Yeah, pretty much.
course, I can
Basically,
make
they
a
need
very-
200 dockers to carry them.
It'd be so funny if they just started calling him Big Nuts throughout the series.
Sometimes I see Sheridan as like the good guy version of Admiral Thrawn. You know, your avatar.
Yeah, pretty
know what I
much.
mean?
What?
Like if Thrawn was a good guy.
You know what, Koji? That's actually not a bad. That's not a bad parallel. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Totally.
as we're talking about, I'm like, hey, I'm noticing some similarities from the Timothy Zahn books I remember reading. So I'm like,
Oh, don't get
Yeah,
me started.
something here.
the brilliant tactician. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know the guy that has got it all. He can plan it all out, and then he'll just nuke them whenever it suits him.
And even if he can't
Pretty
plan it all
much.
out or figure it out, he keeps trying until he can, and he loves doing that too.
He loves doing that.
Well, of course. Okay.
If you
This is
value
the
your lives, be elsewhere. Yes.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but he did personally nuke Delin. I mean, they did have David. And I hang my head in shame.
Yeah, they had David. Yeah, that's a good point.
I hang my head in shame. Hang your head in shame, Ambassador. How dare you?
No need.
It's all good. We all saw Star Wars.
Yeah, go ahead. So, well, guys, we're coming up on an hour and a half. Like I said, I had a feeling we were going to go long on this one, but before we do close, any final thoughts before we go? Or if you want to go for a little bit longer, we can.
Such a
That's what she
brilliant
said.
episode. So brilliant.
Sorry.
I am
Just
sorry.
you're on a roll, Ambassador.
Brilliant on every level, Ambassador. This has been a great show, and honestly, as far as Babylon 5 goes, I'm still hard pressed to find a more pivotal, important episode. To be honest.
Sorry, Lewis Cox. And Lewis Cox is thinking, why did I tune in today? Anyway, fellas, go ahead. I yield the floor. Final thoughts before we close.
Just thinking, do you think Londo left the station? Followed a warning, but I think if Veer knew, he would have let the command staff know. He would have let Ivanova know or let someone know. But do you think Londo told him, let's take a trip?
That is a good question. I'm really trying to think. I always assumed no, because he was like, "What are you talking about?" But then again, I'm not sure. That's a really good question, Lisa. What do you think, Zach?
I kind of at that point, the first time I seen it, I thought, yeah. I kind of got the impression that he left.
Like go where? Io or something, or
no? He could have gone to Centauri Prime.
He does
true.
arrive in the next episode, and I think is it a week's travel between Babylon
D5
5
and Centauri, Centauri
And
Prime.
traditionally, it's a week between each episode. Traditionally, if there's no other specific.
Yeah, because if you
continuation.
remember in the opening monologue of Hour of the Wolf, that's what Jakar says. Or no, I think it's what Ivanova says. No, it's Jakar.
And just thinking, as Veer is still on the station, did he even tell Veer?
Well, Veer was there, I think.
I know, but they told him to leave, but Londo probably would have told, not to worry.
And Benson's, you have a good night, my friend, and we'll see you next time. So thank you for tuning in, and by of course, You can go back and catch the parts that you missed of this stream. So, but all the same, good night, friend. Have a good one.
I'm sorry.
I think he would leave
31's
Veer, actually.
comment.
I don't think he would have left Veer.
Like, if he knew it was danger, he would not leave Veer. But if he knew he had to go because Shadows told him to, it might be something else that he doesn't want Veer a part of. I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted. That's a good question.
I'm just saying there, I like BR31's. I would consider that a divorce.
Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger to Sharon Stone.
Yes.
I love that movie. And I'll bring up Colin's comment here. We saw what might have happened in the message from Avava and War Without End. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Colin, very, very true. But it didn't happen because John dropped the big one. Actually, he dropped two of them. You could almost say that that Sheridan made Zaha Doom go boom.
That's true.
And then he said, as he was falling down into the chasm, "Woohoo!"
Oh,
Yeah, Colin, you're not wrong. And come to think of it, Garibaldi's flashback and Bear Blab Squared. Yeah, that could have happened too, but it didn't because boom. Maybe not boom today, but boom tomorrow. Just boom. Maybe Ivanova is a god, not the. Maybe her psychic abilities go a little bit into the what would they be? The prognostication, sensing the future.
Foresight?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Mm.
So anyway, but we're getting off on tangents here. But yeah, guys, thank you for being here this afternoon / this evening, depending on your time zone, and to everybody that was in the chat today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Hope you had a good time. Hope we brought you some good insight into the episode. And of course, this, like I said, is the season 3 finale. So next week we'll be back with season 4. Thank you, Colin. That was the word I was looking for. Prescience. That's it. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, prescience. That's it. Yeah. A very nice herb.
So I was saying there was that BR31 said that might be because Sheridan didn't go back to Zahadum in that timeline.
That's a possibility too. Yeah.
I think it was possibly if Marcus went back instead of Sinclair, because Sinclair was in Babylon 5 in that premonition. So someone else went back, and they still would have won the previous war, but things would not have worked out. And that's my theory on that one.
I would say it's a pretty good theory.
I like it too.
But anyways, everybody, again, I say thank you all for being here today. And of course, we will be back, as Colin mentioned, with season 4, episode 1, Hour of the Wolf. So, and that, of course, will be at our normal time, 5:30 Central. And I want to thank my fellow council members, those that were here and those that were here in spirit. Of course, Fiona Wolf, with all of her wonderful notes and her wonderful insight that she offered for us. And to our absent but not forgotten council member, Classic Comics. And as always, if you catch this on the replay, make sure you smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and comment down below with your thoughts on this episode of Babylon 5. Let us know what you thought about anything we had to say across the board, whether it's myself, Elysium, Koj, or Zod Rider. And thank you for all your support. And of course, obviously, we will see you next week. But with that all being said, you all have a great one wherever you're at. And this is the Council of Ones saying 1, 2, 3. Zooty.
Zooty,
Zoot.
zoot,
Zoot. Zoot.
Zoot. Zoot.